Over the past several Sundays, we've been hearing gospel stories from Jesus, parables that teach us a lesson, where he has been speaking to either the crowd or to the disciples. This Sunday, he is speaking to the Pharisees. Now, the Pharisees were religious leaders at the time of Jesus who upheld and interpreted and enforced the law, and they also believed in the resurrection of the dead. There's another group of religious leaders called the Sadducees at the time of Jesus who were also interpreters of the law, but they did not believe in the resurrection of the dead. Jesus is speaking to them and tells them a parable of a rich man and Lazarus. And at the end, warning that even the brothers of this rich man will not listen, even if one of them were to come back and rise from the dead. Several years ago, during my graduate studies in the Middle East, I had the opportunity to study in Israel and Jerusalem. And one weekend, a group of us went to see the Yad Vashem Holocaust Memorial Museum in the New Jerusalem city. There's a path towards the entrance. I believe it is called the Avenue of the Righteous. And in the memorial there, right before you enter that pathway, I remember clearly there's this sign marked and written in both Hebrew and in English. And it says, "Forgetfulness leads to exile. Remembrance leads to redemption." To forget leads to exile. To remember leads to redemption. Remember. Pay attention. Jesus tells the story today of a rich man who forgot. He forgot to take care of the poor who were literally standing and sitting and begging at his gate. Some people think in today's gospel it's a sin of being wealthy. The reality is it wasn't. The sin in the gospel today is of complacency. The rich man forgot to take care of the poor. Wealth is not the sin here. In the Mediterranean world, similar to today's culture, wealth is defined, if you were rich, you meant you did not have to work for a living. You could take care of others. And by law, the rich man being clearly affluent in the gospel today, he was required by law at the time of Jesus to take care of the poor. There was a cultural obligation of the wealthy to take care of the poor, to give alms to those who needed it. The rich man knew this, and yet he contradicted the law by living his life as a rich person and totally forgetting the poor. It's interesting, in today's gospel, the poor is named by name. Lazarus has a name. The rich person doesn't. He's named as a rich man. Somehow, Jesus in parable storytelling turns our world upside down. Lazarus was considered unclean. He had open sores. Obviously, he was ostracized from the community. He was a beggar. And that gateway in the gospel was the entryway for both of them from this world to the next. After death, though, we find that the characters in that story, their roles are reversed. The rich man, there's a chasm between heaven and hell, and the rich man finds himself in the opposite position. And he says to God, "Please let me go back and mourn my brothers." And Jesus says, "No, they won't believe, even if someone were to rise from the dead." The point is that after death, it's too late to care for the poor. The rich man doesn't get it. His wrongdoing was his failure to pay attention. His failure to exercise justice and to do what is right, to share his blessings with others by law. His sin and later his torment was neglecting the needs of others. He forgot and failed to pay attention. And because he forgot, that led to exile from God. The gospel rings true for us today. Regardless of our social status, we all fail in complacency. So how are we called this week to pay attention? What do we need to remember? Who do we need to be mindful of? Who is at our gate begging for need, asking us to care for them? And what are our distractions? And they could be many, from not paying attention to other people. It could be cynicism. It could be the social media. It could be wealth or lack of wealth. The issue is for us to pay attention to what numbs us to the suffering of others and find the courage to move beyond that, to care and to love. The importance of today's gospel is to pay attention, because that brings us closer to the reality of God's love in our world. There are so many at our gate in need of love, in need of community. Let us not be complacent. Let us pay attention and reach out to those in need of love. Amen.